Good morning and God bless her. So this is my report for the chapter 4, which is the tissues, glands, and membranes. So let us first define what is tissue. So tissue is a group of cells with similar structure and function, as well as similar extracellular substances like proteins and even fats located between the cells. So there are actually types of tissues, however similar lang na sila og structure and functions even sa mga substances located sa cells sa atong tissue. So next one, histology, which is the study of tissue structure, the microscopic study of the structure of the tissue. And next one, development, growth, aging, trauma, and disease result from changes in tissues. For example, enlargement of skeletal muscles occurs because skeletal muscle cells increase in size in response to exercise. Of course, during exercise, so ang muscle cells nato ana is mag-increase sa size. So as a result, naay enlargement sa ato ang muscles. And also, there are tissues pod nga magkatigwang na or magka-old, napo na siya effect. Example diri sa aging, sa trauma, and even diseases. So if na-increase sa imong sa tissue cells nimo, napoy increase sa imong tissue. So there are 4 basic type of tissue: the epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and lastly the nervous tissue. So the first one is the epithelial tissue. So it covers internal and external surfaces. External surfaces is for example the skin, which is located outside of the body. And for the internal is muna siya ang mga lining of cavities such as the digestive tract, the respiratory passages, and blood vessels. So outside ana nga kuan sa respiratory passages or the blood vessels or even the cavities, na tissues dadto, which is epithelial tissue. So epithelium consists almost entirely of cells with very little extracellular matrix between them. So there are tissues nga gamay lang kaayo ang iyang structure compared sa other nga tissues, compared sa epithelium na tissues, because as we see the pictures, na siya extracellular matrix, which is the free surface, and also naapoy the basement membrane makita nato, and the underlying tissue. So example ana is kana siyang nasa picture natong makita. So that is the epithelial tissue. So next one is the functions of epithelia. So the major functions of epithelia include: 1, protecting underlying structures. So for example ana niya is katong sa skin o katong sa lining sa mga cavities sa mga organs nato, to prevent or to avoid the na friction or abrasion sa between organs. So very mo na siya ang mag-protect. Second is acting as barrier. So just like the skin, siya ang mag-act as barrier, for example sa water and even sa water loss from the body. So iya pong i-prevent the entry of like mga toxic molecules and microorganisms sa ato ang body. So next one is permitting the passage of substances. So epithelium allows the movement of many substances through epithelial layer. So iyarang i-allow kung unsay mga movement or mga substances nga mukuan sa ato ang lawas. That for example is the oxygen and even carbon dioxide. So these are the exchange between the air and blood by diffusion through epithelium in the lungs. So muna siya ang iyahang function. Also secreting substances. So like siya apod ang in charge, or siya pod ang mag-discharge sa mga substances into o outside sa ato ang body. So for example, like sa sweat glands, ang iyang i-discharge or ang i-secrete niya is ang sweat. So mo na siya. And lastly, the absorption of substances or the absorbing substances. So the cell membranes of certain epithelial tissues contain carrier molecules that regulate the absorption of the of materials. So for example, so epithelial cells sa ato ang intestine, siya ang mag-absorb og digested food molecules, vitamins and ions. So mo na ang iyang function. So next one is the classification of epithelia. So epithelia are classified according to the number of cell layers and the shape of the cells. So for example, simple epithelium consists of a single layer of cells. So by the way, atong kalahian ani is naa siya duha ka layer sa cell, which is the simple or the stratified. So ang kalahian, ang si simple cell is one layer lang na siya of cells, whereas the stratified is more than one layer of cells. So there are categories of epithelium based on cell shape. So cell layers ganina and karon cell shape. Aquamous meaning flat, cuboidal or cube-like, and columnar which is tall and thin. So basta epithelia ganang tissue duha gyud na ang iyahang names. So for example, by the way, so mao ni siya ang sa simple epithelia and the stratified epithelia. So makita nato dira sa simple is one layer lang na siya. Pero ang iyahang ang iyahang cell shape niya, di ba? Ang aquamous is flat. So makita nato is flat. Ang cuboidal is cube-like and sa columnar is thin or tall. Makita nato dira. And of course, one cell layer na siya. Whereas sa stratified epithelia, more than one ang iyahang cell layers, pero ang iyahang shape niya is ang squamous is flat, awagagmay kaayo ang iyahang cell layers niya kay na flat siya. Sa cuboidal which is cube-like, makita nato, and columnar which is thin or tall. So mo na ang forma sa cell layer og cell shape mo na siya. So next one is in most cases each epithelium is given two names. So ako na mention ganina is two names gina siya. Iyahang basihan is sa cell layer and cell shape. So for example, simple squamous. So ang kuan sa simple squamous is one layer lang siya pero flat siya ang iyang forma. Next one is simple columnar, which is one layer lang gihapon siya kay simple man siya pero kuan lang siya, tall or thin kay columnar man siya. So ang lastly, stratified squamous epithelial, daghan siya og cell layers, squamous siya, so flat ang iyang forma na epithelia. So that is example sa mga names sa tissue. So first one is the simple squamous epithelium. So it's a single layer of thin flat cells. So sa alveoli or alveoli, kuan na siya, it is a tissue located sa ato ang lungs. So it consists of simple squamous epithelium that allows oxygen from the air to diffuse into the body, so yang is scattered, and carbon dioxide to diffuse out of the body into the air. So simple squamous epithelium also functions to prevent abrasion between organs in the thoracic and abdominopelvic cavity. So akong na-mention ganina, siya ang mag-protect from abrasion. So the outer surface of the organs are covered with simple squamous epithelium that secretes a slippery fluid. So mag-discharge siya og mga slippery fluid. So the fluid lubricates the surfaces between the organs, preventing damage from friction when the organs rub against one another. So just like the cavity nga na-mention sa chapter 1 na discussion, which is the cavity like the serous membrane, di ba gani sa itong chapter 1. So siya ang mag-protect because siya ang magputos sa mga organs to prevent friction sa basta magtagbo-tagbo ang mga basta mag-rub against with each other ang mga organs. So to avoid the friction or the abrasion, so mao na siya ang tissue, mao na iyang function. So this is the picture nga akong na-mention ganina, alveoli of lungs. So mao na siya ang forma sa iyang simple squamous epithelial tissue. So next one is the simple cuboidal epithelium. It is a single layer of cube-like. So these cells have a greater volume than simple squamous epithelium cells and contain more cell organelles. So the organelles of simple cuboidal cells that actively transport. So when we say actively transport, magamit yun na siya og energy. And basta magamit og energy, always yun na naka-include si ATP. And also the mitochondria, which is the powerhouses of the cell, si mitochondria. So, and organelles needed to synthesize the transport of proteins. So, the mini kidney tubules, all having large portions of their wall composed of simple cuboidal epithelium. So, usually makuhaan siya sa kidney tubules. So, mala siya ang simple cuboidal epithelium. So, mo ni siya ang iyang forma. Ganina na-mention ako, isa kidney siya makuan, located usually. So, mo na siya, di ba, murag mas kuan siya og volume compared ganina sa epithelium nga kato sa ovule of the lungs. Compared ganina ato nga picture nga atong nakita, mas kuan ang volume sa cuboidal nga epithelium. And of course, makita nato sa picture nga single layer ra siya. Pero medyo baga-baga lang siya. Kay cube man ang iyahang shape. Dili man siya thin pareha sa epithelial. Dili pareha sa simple. Ganina. So, next one is the simple columnar epithelial. So, again, single layer. Dayon, ang iyang shape is tall and thin cells. So these large cells contain organelles that enable them to perform complex functions. For example, the simple columnar epithelium of the small intestine produces and releases digestive enzymes that complete the process of digesting food. So, na-mention na nako ganina ang ihang function sa epithelial. So, medyo laylay sila og kuan structure, pero similar ra sila og functions. So, this is the picture showing the simple columnar epithelial tissue. So, single layer siya. Makita nato ang cells. Ang cells niya is na-attach siya sa iyang basement membrane. Single layer siya, pero ang iyang shape is medyo taller siya o nipis siya compared ganina sa cube-like nga tissue. So, the next one is the pseudo-stratified columnar epithelial. So, it is a special type of simple epithelium. The prefix pseudo means false. So, this type of epithelium appears to be stratified but is not. So, that's why gitawag siyang pseudo-stratified because mura siyang stratified pero dili siya. Simple na siya. Singular na siya. So, makita nato siya why. Nako ipakita nga picture later on. So, this epithelium, it consists of one layer of cells with all the cells attached to the basement membrane. There is an appearance of two or more layers of cells because of some of the cells are tall and reach the free surface, whereas others are short and do not reach the free surface. So the stratified columnar epithelium is found lining some of the respiratory passages such as the nasal cavity, trachea, and the bronchi. So, mo ni siya ang picture. So, makita nato no is, dira sa ikaduha nga picture is, mura siya daghag layer. Pero, actually, isa ra gyud layer ana. Kuan lang yun na siya. Ang uban ana niya is, tag-as, then very thin. Mura siya gasapaw-sapaw og forma. So, mura siya, kuan ba, nagsapaw-sapaw siya, but, it appears like a stratified epithelium. Pero, simple ra na siya. One layer ra na siya sa cell. So, that's why gitawag siyang pseudo-stratified because it's like it appears to be like stratified but it's not. So, makita nato sa picture. So next one is the stratified squamous epithelium. It forms a thick epithelium because it consists of many layers of cell. So one type of stratified squamous epithelium forms the outer layer of the skin and is called keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. So unsa din na siya? So the outer layers consist of dead stratified cells tightly bound to one another. So more or siya keratinized. Ang surface niya nag-consist siya og mga dead cells, dead layers of the cells. So they provide protection against abrasion, form a barrier that prevents microorganisms and toxic chemicals from entering the body and prevent the loss of water from the body. So same rag function sa mga na-discuss ganina. So makita sa picture kanang sa keratinized is mo na siya yung mga dead cells sa surface niya. So in contrast, stratified squamous epithelium of the mouth is composed of living cells with a moist surface. So ganina sa keratinized is dead cells ang nasa surface niya. However, kaning sa simple lang ay sa stratified squamous lang sa epithelium is living cells ang nagkuan niya sa surface. Example is sa tongue daw, sa mouth daw nato. So it also provides protection against abrasion and acts as a mechanical barrier preventing the entry of microorganisms into the body. Water, however, can move across it more readily than across the skin. So similar lang yun ang iyang function. Protection, barrier, for secretion, absorption. So mo na siya ang mga kuan gyud, mga common nga function sa tissues. So mo ni siya ang pictures for sa example sa stratified squamous epithelial layer. So daghan siya layer sa cells. So mo na siya. And nagkuan siya, attach siya sa basement membrane. Next one is the transitional epithelium. It's a special type of stratified epithelium that can be greatly stretched. So stratified gihapon siya pero ma-stretch siya. So sa unstretched not state, transitional epithelium consists of 5 or more layers of cuboidal or columnar cells that often are dome-shaped at the free surface. So makita nato dira sa free surface niya kanang sa pinakaibabaw, di ba dome-shaped siya. More siyag nag-curve. And makita nato sa layer na siya 5 or more layers. Mao na siya ang ihang forma basta wala pa siya na stretch. So sa stretch nga state, the cells change shape to a low cuboidal or squamous shape, and the number of cell layers decreases. Transitional epithelium is found lining cavities that can be expand greatly, such as the urinary bladder. It also protects underlying structures from the caustic effect of urine. So makita nato dira sa picture, basta na stretch na siya is magamay ang ihang layers. And makita nato is dili na siya nagkuan like kanina 5 or more man, karon kay below 5 layers na lang siya of the cell. Makita nato. So it also protects underlying structures from the caustic effects of urine. So ang caustic effect, injury caused by chemical reaction. So di ba ato ang urine, so it's either kani nga chemical reaction is nakakause siya because of the acid or the basic nga fluid. So diri sa urine, ang iyang case diri is acidic man man ang urine. So makakuan siya caustic effect, makakause siya og injury sa other tissues. However, kani transitional epithelium kay siya ang mag-protect from the caustic effect of urine. So next one is the cell layers and the cell shapes. So na-discuss na to ganina sa iyang layer of shapes. So the number of layers and the shape of the cell in specific type of epithelium reflect the function of the epithelium performs. Kung saang iyang cell layer o cell shape, dira mag-base ang function sa tissue. So two important functions: controlling the passage of materials through the epithelium, like katong mga blood vessels, passage sa blood vessels, and other one is protecting the underlying tissues. So differences in function are also reflected in cell shape. So as I've mentioned ganina, kung saang layer niya og shape niya, dito mag-base ang iyang function. So cells are normally flat and thin. So ang function ana niya is diffusion, such as the alveoli of the lungs, or filtration such as in kidney tubules. So basta flat og thin, ang iyang function, it's either diffusion or filtration. So cells with the major functions of secretion or absorption are usually cuboidal or columnar. So they are large because they contain more organelles which are responsible for the function of the cell. The stomach, for example, is lined with simple columnar epithelium. So maglahi-lahi gid siya, basta normally flat lang siya or thin. So ang iyang function na is diffusion or filtration. Basta ang iya ganing function is secretion or absorption, ang porma ana niya sa cell niya is cuboidal or columnar. So, let's proceed on discussing the free cell surface na kita nato ganina no ang free cell surface. So, kani siya is an example of an extracellular matrix of the cell, ang free surface. Other example is katong a basement membrane. So, most epithelial have a free surface which is not contact with other cells and faces away from the underlying tissue. So, the free surface can be smooth or it can have microvilli or cilia. So, naay duha. It's duha ka surface. Ganina, so far, atong nakita is smooth surface to sila. But also, naapaday lain, naay mga hair-like structures, which is the cilia or the microvilli. So, the smooth surface reduce friction. For example, the lining of blood vessels is simple squamous epithelium with a smooth surface which reduces friction as blood flows through the vessels. So, kato ganina atong nakita is smooth surface to siya example. So, intermixed with the ciliated cells are specialized mucus-producing cells called goblet cells. So, sa katong free surfaces nga naay mga hair-like structures like gingon diri ciliated cells. So, ang special nga function ato niya is mag-produce siya og mga goblet cells which is kanang mga mucus. So, for example is sa ato ang throat daw diri. So, dust and other materials are trapped in the mucus or which is the goblet cells that covers the epithelium, and movement of the cilia propels the mucus with its entrapped particles to the back of the throat where it is swallowed or coughed up. The constant movement of mucus helps the respiratory passages clean. So same sa ato ang ilong diri sa nose na ay kuha na siya ang surface ana niya is ciliated na siya, like na siya mga hair-like structures. So dira is magproduce siya og mucus nga mao to siya mo trap sa mga dust nga ato ang ma-breathe in. So di ba basta magkuan ta sa atong ilong is nay mga hugaw. So mo na siya to prevent nga ma-block ang nasal nga way sa ato ang air sa pag-breathe sa ilong. Aron clean siya, clean ang passage. So kung mo-breathe ka dili ka maglisod. So di ba there are times nga mapuno atong ilong na maglisod ta og kuan. So very important gid kayo pud na ang kuan surface na naay ciliated. Also, ang smooth man po, lahi-lahi og function. So, both are important. Lahi-lahi sila og function. Depende sa iyahang structure niya sa surface. It's either smooth or ciliated or na mga hair-like structures. So, ganiha is the free surface of the cell. Kani is the cell connections. So, epithelial cells are connected to one another in several ways. There are two, which is the tight junction and the gap junction. So, makita nato dira sa picture ang tight junction o the gap junction. And nakita po nato dira ang free surface nga smooth siya. So, the first one is the tight junctions. So, it binds adjacent cells together and form permeability barriers because tight junctions completely surround each cell. So makita nato dira no ang forma sa cell kay murag long siya, and then makita nato na murag line dira. So dira dapita mo na siyang tight junction, and it serves as a barrier between to prevent the passage of materials between epithelial cells. So materials that pass through the epithelial layer must pass through the cells, which can regulate what materials cross the epithelial layer. So tight junctions are found in the lining of intestines and most other simple epithelia. So muna siyang iyang function, iya lang i-protect or mag-serve siya as barrier from other materials sa lain nga cells. So, the other one is the gap junction. So, lahi po ni siya og function sa tight junction. So, makita na to nga sa picture dira no is na siya murag gap, and then naay mga channels or naay mga substances or materials sa to nga. So, so these channels allow small molecules and ions to pass from one epithelial cell to an adjacent one. Most epithelial cells are connected to one another by gap junctions, and it is believed that molecules or ions moving through the gap junctions act as communication signals to coordinate the activities of the cell. So muna siya ang mag-serve siya as communication signals sa other nga cell materials aron na ay coordination sa activities sa mga cells. Next one is glands. So a gland is a multicellular structure that secretes substances into a surface, into a cavity, or into the blood. Most glands are composed primarily of epithelium. Sometimes single goblet cells are classified as unicellular glands because they secrete mucus onto epithelial surface. So for example is katoa ganina. So glands with ducts are called exocrine glands. The exocrine glands can be simple with ducts that have no branches or compound. Makita rin nato ang picture ana sa next na slide. Some tubular glands are straight and other have coiled tubules. Again, makita rin nato siya sa next slide. Some tubular glands have ends that are expanded into a sac-like structure called an acynus, meaning grape-like, or avulus, meaning small cavity, and into a small cavity. Secretions from exocrine glands pass through the ducts into a surface or into an organ. For example, example sa gland ay is sweat from sweat glands and oil from sebaceous glands flow onto the skin. So, very common example ang sweat glands, which is mag-discharge siya or mag-secrete siya og sweats. So, mo na siya ang glands. So, mo ni siya ang iyahang shape, structure, o iyang forma. So, this one. So, makita nato no ganina is katong grape-like pancreas and mammary glands, which is the acinar. O gani sa taas is the acinar or alveolar. So mo ni siya ganina katong tube lang siya, wala siya yung mga branches kanang pinakauna, simple straight tubular. So mo na siya. So dili lang kayo ta mag-touch ana niya kay ma-discuss pa daw na siya sa further nga chapters sa ani nga book. So, the second type, the basic type of tissue is the connective tissue. So, structure is usually characterized by large amounts of extracellular materials that separate cells from one another. So, the extracellular material or extracellular matrix. So, katong mga same ra gihapon kato ganina sa free surface, basement membrane, pero na lang daw siya dungag. So, there are three major components: protein fibers, ground substance consisting of non-fibrous protein and other molecules, and lastly fluid. So a large network of proteins and other molecules that surround, support, and give structure to cells and tissues in the body. So mo na siya ang matrix, extracellular matrix, kanang definition sa ubos. Lubot nga nako. So it helps cells attach to and communicate with nearby cells and plays an important role in cell growth, cell movement, and other cell functions. So this is the protein fibers help to form most connective tissues. Connective tissue is reinforced by bundles of fibers that provide tensile strength, elasticity, and protection. So same ra og function sa epithelial nga tissue. Protection gyapon siya. However, kaning kuan lang siya, kaning sa connective tissue is kuan lang siya, more stretchy and mas kuan siya og strength. So the first type of protein fiber is the collagen fibers. So makita nato sa picture is very thin ang iyahang forma niya. So which resembles microscopic ropes, are flexible but resist stretching. It is mostly found in connective tissue such as cartilage, bones, tendons, ligaments, and as well as the skin. So makita nato dira sa picture ang iyang forma is very So very thin siya. So ma-compare na nato siya sa other nga protein fibers. So ano siya ang collagen fibers. So next one is the reticular fibers are very fine, short. So compared ganina is long. So there is a short. So to form a supporting network. Reticular connective tissue is found around the kidney, liver, the spleen, and lymph nodes, Peyer's patches, as well as in the bone marrow. So muna siya ang forma sa reticular fibers. So compared ganina is short gadihang fibers og nigpis pod siya compared sa collagen. So lastly is the elastic fibers. So it has have a structure similar to coiled metal bed springs. So makita nato dira no nga lahi ang iyang forma compared sa kuan mura siyag katag ang iyang fibers. And of course gagmay gihapon siya. After being stretched, elastic fibers have the ability to recoil to their original shape. So example ana is ang skin, di ba? So if i-stretch na to ang skin, inigboyan nato is mobalik ra siya sa iyang original nga structure or forma niya. And other examples found in the lungs, arteries, veins, connective tissues, proper elastic cartilage, fetal tissue, and other tissues which must undergo mechanical stretching. So from the word elastic fibers, no? So meaning ang one function gyud na niya is to stretch, ma-stretch siya. So in the lung there are thick and thin elastic fibers. So mo na siya ang ikatulo nga protein fiber. So same ganina sa simple og stratified na nagdepende ang iyang function sa iyang structure. So diri pud sa connective tissue, so magkuan gyapon siya according sa iyang function. Ang iyang name according sa iyang function. So blast cell produce the matrix. So si blast daw siya ang mag-produce sa structure niya, structure sa cell. So si site siya ang mag-maintain ato nga structure, and then si class siya ang mag-break down sa cell for remodeling. So for example, si osteoblast. So osteoblast, osteo means bones. So si osteoblast, kay blast man siya ang mag-produce sa structure so siya ang mag-form sa bone, di ba? So si osteocytes, siya ang mag-maintain sa structure, siya ang mag-maintain sa bone. And lastly, the osteoblast, siya ang mag-break down sa bone. So for example ana is ang sa skull nato, di ba? Sa skull nato sa bat. So example ana is sa skull. So di ba ang sa skull nato is lahi siya sa baby pata og lahi siya sa kalon. So kani nga cell is, for example, si osteoblast, is siya to ang mag-form sa bone sa tua. So sa bata pata. So si osteocytes, siya ang mag-maintain ato nga bone, di ba? So pag abot si osteoclast, so magkadako ta siya ang mag-break down or mag-remodel ato nga bone. So mousab ang atong forma sa skull. So mo na siya ang example. So cells associated with the immune systems are also found in connective tissue. So next one is the functions of connective tissue. So same ra gihapon ni sila, similar ra gihapon ni sila og function sa epithelial nga tissue. So dili ra kaayo ta dili ra kaayo ko malibog. So first one is enclosing and separating. So sheets of connective tissues form capsules or round organs such as the liver and the kidneys. So moto siya ang mag-separate sa tissue and organs. Example ana niya is connective tissue separates muscles, arteries, veins, and nerves from one another. So connecting tissues to one another. So from the word connective tissue, so obvious na kaayo nga siya nga function. So tendons are strong cables or bands of connective tissue that attach muscles to bone. So nag-connect siya. And ligaments are connective tissue bands that hold bones together. So another one is supporting and moving. So bones of the skeletal system provide rigid support for the body, and the semi-rigid cartilage supports structures such as the nose, ears, and surfaces of joints. So joints between bones allow one part of the body to move relative to other parts. So moto siya ang first three functions sa connective tissues. So, number 4, storing. So, siya ang mag-store og fats dito sa tissue. So, store minerals such as calcium and phosphate. So, kalima, cushioning and insulating. Adipose tissue or fats cushions and protects the tissues it surrounds and provides an insulating layer beneath the skin that helps conserve heat. Transporting blood transport substances throughout the body such as gases, nutrients, ug even katong mga blood vessels nga na-mention ganina. And lastly, protecting cells of the immune system and blood provide protection against toxins and tissue injury as well as from microorganisms. So bones protect underlying structures from injury. So compared sa katong ganina sa epithelium, ang iyang gina-protect is katong mga organs gyud kay siya may magputos. So diri more on connect siya sa other nga tissues og including ana is ang bones pod. So move on na ta sa ikatulo, which is the muscle tissue. So the main characteristic of muscle tissue is its ability to contract or shorten, making movements possible. Muscle contraction results from contractile proteins located within the muscle cells. So, see chapter 7. So, ma-discuss pa siya further sa next chapter. So, the length of muscle cells is greater than the diameter because they often resemble tiny threads. Muscle cells are sometimes called muscle fibers. So, fibers gihapon siya, pero kanilang siya is mas baga siya compared sa connective tissue niya. So, also called the muscle fibers. So, the first one is the 3 types of muscle tissue. The first one is the skeletal muscle. So, skeletal muscle, gitawag siya skeletal muscle because kani siya nga muscle is na-attach siya sa bone. So, it's the meat of animals and constitutes about 40% of the person's body weight, ang skeletal muscle. So, it is normally under voluntary control. Skeletal muscle cells tend to be long, cylindrical cells with several nuclei per cell. So, makita nato dira ang iyang forma niya. So, mo na siya ang iyang muscle fiber niya sa skeletal muscle. So, kani daw siya nga muscle is voluntary, which is makontrol nato ni siya nga muscle. Kay naman ko'y mga muscle nga dili makontrol, which is ma-discuss na sa next slide. So, diri nakita nato is na siya sa atong arm nga muscle, sa bicep. So, mo na siya example sa skeletal. Diba? Kay attach man siya sa bone. So, that's why gitawag siya skeletal muscle. So, the next one is the cardiac muscle. So, mo ni siya ang giingon ganina. So, kaning cardiac muscle from the word cardiac is mo ni siya ang muscle sa atong heart. So, it is responsible for pumping blood. So, it is under involuntary, meaning dili nato ni siya makontrol. It's our nerves or sa nervous system nato siya ang sugo or naghatag og information nga magpump ka og blood din. So, ikaw ang magkuan. So kita kita lang yun mismo sa ato ang kaugalingon, dili na nato ma-control. Like for example sa muscle, ma-contract nato siya, ato siyang makuan, ma-flex nato siya, di ba? So sa heart, dili gyud na siya, dili nimo na siya ma-stop, dili na nimo siya mapaspas. So involuntary ang kuan na niya. So cardiac muscle cells are striated or banded and usually have one nucleus per cell. So makita nato dira sa pictures sa ubos. So, ma-discuss pa actually na siya furthermore sa umaabot nga chapter, sa sunod pa nga chapters. So, lastly, the smooth muscles, which forms the walls of hollow organs, like hollow organs, except sa heart, kay ang heart, kay cardiac man to. And also is found in the skin and the eyes. It is responsible for a number of functions, such as movement of food through the digestive tract and emptying of the urinary bladder. Smooth muscle is controlled involuntarily. So, same sa cardiac. Smooth muscle cells are tapered at each end, have a single nucleus and are not striated or not banded or wala siya na line. So makita nato dira sa picture ang smooth nga muscles. So makita nato siya usually sa ato ang intestine, sa ato ang stomach. So magregulate siya og ganang kuan movement. o kuan movement of food. So mo na siya ang smooth muscle. So lastly is the nervous tissue. So nervous tissue, from the word nervous, like the nervous system. So kuan siya, it forms the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. So it is responsible for coordinating and controlling many bodily activities. So na-mention ako ganina katong mga involuntary nga mga unconscious nga mga muscles. So siya ang in charge ani. So for example, the conscious control of skeletal muscle and the unconscious regulation of cardiac muscle are accomplished by nervous tissue. Apil de pod ang mga conscious, like tanan siya. So awareness of ourselves and the external environment, emotions, reasoning skills, and memory are other functions performed by nervous tissue. So many of these functions depend on the ability of nervous tissue cells to communicate with one another. So with katong communication og mga signals, ang gitawagan niya is action potential. So action potential occurs when a neuron sends information down an axon away from the cell body, or mo na siya gitawag nato nga impulse. So naay action, so naay reaction or naay signal na information nga na send. So the neuron or the nerve cell is responsible for the conduction of action potential. So siya to ang mag-conduct sa mga information nga i-send throughout the body. It is composed of three parts. Una, the cell body, which is ang cell body is nag-contain of og nucleus, og dito ang site of general cell functions. So the next one is the dendrites and axons. So kaning duha is it is a part of the nervous cell or the nervous cell na sila to ang mga extension. So same na sila og function. Siya ang mag-conduct og siya ang mag-receive o siya ang mag-conduct sa action potentials. Pero ang kalahian lang si dendrites kay towards the cell body. Si axon away from the cell body. So lastly is the neuroglia. So mo ni siya ang mag-support sa cell sa nervous system, and they function to nourish, protect, and insulate the neurons. So madiscuss daw siya furthermore sa next pagid nga mga chapters. So, mo ni siya ang porma sa neuron. So, katong sa nerve cell. So, the cell body, makita nato dira sa center, na dira si nucleus. And si dendrites and the axon naa sa ubos. So si neurons, mo na siya ang mag-transmit og information. So, neuroglia, makita nato dira siya ang mag-provide og support og mag-protect sa axon og sa dendrites. So next one is the membrane. So si membrane, medyo familiar na taani, nakuani. It's because sa chapter 1 pa lang daan is na-mention or na-discuss na ni siya. So a membrane is a thin sheet or layer of tissue that covers a structure or lines a cavity. So most membranes consist of epithelium and the connective tissue on which the epithelium rests. So the two major categories of membranes are mucous membranes and serous membranes. So for example, sa cardiac muscle, sa ato ang heart. So dira sa lining ana niya is sa outer structure is sa cover sa outer structure siya ang nag-cover sa line sa cavity. So makita nato dira sa picture is naa siya serous membrane. So, first one is the mucous membrane. So, mucous membrane, it consists of various kinds of epithelium resting on thick layer of loose connective tissue. So, they line cavities that open to the outside of the body such as the digestive, respiratory, and excretory and reproductive tracts. So, the function of mucous membrane vary depending on their location. So, for example, si stratified squamous epithelium of the oral cavity or ang mouth, siya ang mag-perform as protection, whereas the simple columnar epithelium of the intestine siya ang mag-absorb og nutrients or mag-discharge og mga digestive enzymes og mucus. So, inflammation of the mucous membrane of the nasal passages caused by the common cold or allergies is called rhinitis. Refers to the nose. So, inflammation. So, madiscuss pa nato na siya sa mga next slide. So example is the rhinitis, which is ang allergy sa or na inflammation sa mucous membrane. So, basta na inflammation sa mucous membrane, so naay pwede nga effect ana niya. Like example diri is allergy or common cold. So next one is the serous membranes. So it consists of simple squamous epithelium resting on a delicate layer of loose connective tissues. So serous membranes line the trunk cavities and cover the organs located with these cavities. So the serous membrane secretes serous fluid which covers the surface of the membranes. The smooth surface of the epithelial cells of the serous membranes together with the lubricating qualities of the serous fluid siya ang mag-lubricate sa surface sa cell, combines to prevent damage from abrasion when organs in the thoracic or abdominal pelvic cavities rubs against each other. So, kato ganina sa mucous membrane, magkuan to siya og magproduce to siya og mucus. So, diri siya ang mag-protect sa mga organs when mag-rub sila with each other, against each other. So, si serous membrane, mo ni siya ang na-discuss sa katong chapter 1. So, they are named according to their location. So, the pleural membrane are associated with the lungs. So, siya ang magputos sa lungs. Siya ang mag-protect. The pericardial membrane associated with the heart and peritoneal are located in the abdominopelvic activity. So, when the suffix itis is added to the name of a structure, it means that the structure are inflamed. So, na-inflammation daw. Basta, sumpaya daw nimo siya ITES. So, ang meaning daw ana is na-inflammation na hitabo ana. So, makita na to is swollen siya or na siya redness or mahubag siya. Swollen gani mahubag. So, for example, pericarditis and peritonitis are inflammations of the they are inflammations of the pericardial membrane or peritoneal membranes respectively. So, pleurisy is an inflammation of the pleural membranes. So, muna siyang example sa serous membrane. So, next one is the tissue repair. So, tissue repair, the substitution, so na-mention man na to ganinang inflammation, no? So, inflammation is na siya damage or injury sa surface sa cell. So if there is a damage, so napotay tissue repair. So tissue repair, the substitution of viable cells for dead cells can occur by regeneration or replacement. So basta na injury dadto, na ay mga matay nga cells dadto. So diri sa tissue repair natay gitawag nga regeneration or replacement, where ang katong mga dead cells is ma-replace to sila og mga bag-o nga cells. So in regeneration, the new cells are the same type as those that were destroyed and normal function is usually restored. So in replacement, a new type of tissue develops that eventually causes scar production and the loss of some tissue function. So mo na siya ang replacement niya. Ma-replace man gud to siya, so na siya dili gyud siya ma-restore ang iyahang whole nga naapektuhan. Na replacement. So mo nang ang uban is maulat siya. So that's why. So, cells can be classified into 3 groups on the basis of their ability to divide and produce new cells. So, kani sila labile cells or si labile cells continue to divide throughout life. So, mag-divide lagi na siya per me na injury ba ka or wala. So, there are cells nga always continue lagi na siya mag-divide. So, damage to such labile cells are the cells of the skin and mucous membranes can be repaired completely by regeneration. So, mamatay tong mga cells dadto is naarga per regeneration kay premier man siya mag-divide. So, kaduha is the stable cells. So, they do not actively divide after growth ceases, but they do retain the ability to divide after an injury. For example, connective tissue and glands, including the liver and pancreas, are capable of regeneration. So, dili siya same sa kuan labile cells nga mag-divide lagi siya per me. Pero diri is ma-retain niya iyang formation or iyang structure basta the ability to divide. So, after ka maka-injury. So lastly, permanent cells have little or no ability to divide. So neurons and skeletal muscle cells are examples of permanent cells. So if they are killed, they are usually replaced by connective tissue. So permanent cells, however, can usually recover from a limited amount of damage. So dili siya ma-replace, dili siya ma-regenerate. Wala regeneration ang permanent cells, pero ma-replace siya sa connective tissues. And if ever magani nalay small damage is babalik ra gihapon siya. Ma-replace siya if gamay ra ang iyang maka-recover siya if ang iyang damage is gamay ra. For example, if the axon of a neuron is damaged, the neuron can grow a new axon, di ba? So if the cell body is sufficiently damaged, however, the neuron dies and is replaced by connective tissue. So mura to siya if sa nerve cell is gamay lang iyang damage, for example sa axon, so si kuan is si nerve cell is magproduce siya lain nga axon if gamay ra ang damage. However, if damage gid kaayo, mapatay ang cell, so dili to siya mapulihan og another nerve cell na pod, but mapulihan to siya og nerve connective tissue. So next one, this is actually a picture of an inflammation. So kanang samad tira sa to nga is that is caused by a splinter. So dira sa sulod is na inflammation na hitabo kay na may injury, di ba? Nahitabo. So fresh wound, so mo ni siya example sa tissue repair. So a fresh wound cuts through the epithelium or the epidermis, which is dira sa skin kanang sa surface, an underlying connective tissue which is ang kanang dermis, makita nato, and a clot forms. So magdugo siya. So about 1 week after the injury, a scab is presented. So after the injury, di ba, muuga man na ang dugo or clot, so mag-produce siya og scab, I mean, so kanang kugan bitaw, and epidermis is growing into the wound. So fibroblast, it is a type of cell that contributes to the formation of connective tissue. And macrophages, a type of white blood cells, removes dead cells, move into the deep region of the cell. So makita nato dira na macrophages sa tunga. So siya ang mag-remove sa mga dead cells sa ana nga region nga naapektuhan. So si fibroblast pod siya ang mag-help sa formation sa connective tissue aron ma-close ang ihang samad. So lastly, so about 2 weeks after the injury, the epidermis has grown completely into the wound and the fibroblasts have formed granulation tissue. So makita nato dira granulation tissue. So iyang gitabangan niya og kana bitong produce og connective tissue aron ma-connect siya, aron ma-close ang iyang cut. So about 1 month after the injury, the wound has closed completely. So the scab has been sloughed or na-shed or na-remove na siya. Dayon, and the granulation tissue is being replaced by new connective tissue. So inya na ang tissue repair. So I think that is all for the chapter 4, which is the tissue, the gland, and the membrane. So that is all. Thank you and God bless.